Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Curseof and welcome back to another video. Today we are here to do another deck profile for you guys, and once again we have another top cut deck profile for the channel. This time we have a top 4 Magnet Warrior deck profile. This one I used to top Tetra's tournament, which was a 56 player event. It had 6 rounds of Swiss and a top 8 cut, so very similar to the Speed Duel League series, which I topped Spellproof with. But the difference is obviously top 16 for the Speed Duel League series, top 8 for Tetra's Little Battle City box event. But regardless, we managed to get a top 4 slot with this Magnet Warrior deck, going 5-1 in Swiss. And yeah, basically every single game that I did end up losing with this deck, I only lost if I ended up bricking. The only exception to this was my game against Idox, which he did actually win without the deck bricking itself. So very, very powerful deck. I think magnets are extremely, extremely underrated. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys my my top 4 deck profile here. So very quickly, before I do start this off, I will say that I will have some changes that I do want to make to this deck, and I will basically show a updated version of this deck, or what I want this deck to look like now, at the end of the video. So if you guys want to see the updated version after the actual top cut deck profile, I highly recommend sticking around till the end. Alright, so once again, to start the video off, as we always do, we have the skill card for the deck, and we have Yugioh's Magnetic Attraction. A lot of people are starting to stray away from the Magnetic Attraction skill, and are trying to play other things, and honestly, I think that's very, very incorrect. I see a lot of people going for Twisted Personality because they're thinking to themselves, well hey, Twisted Personality isn't out to Spellproof Armor, which is what this deck struggles with immensely. And although that can be your mentality, you have to kind of think about the fact, well, how am I going to get counters for my Twisted Personality? And a lot of people are like, well, you know, you crash in your magnets all the time, right? Well, in a normal match you would. But against Spellproof Armor, you're not going to be crashing in any of your magnets because you can't get your field spell effect to work on your opponent's monsters, and thus you don't have a real way to get counters. So unless you're building your Magnet Warrior deck around something like Twisted Personality, don't play it. Magnetic Attraction is 100% the correct skill for this deck. The main thing that you need to focus on for this deck is getting your magnets and getting your field spell, and getting that combo on the go, and having the ability to swarm the board with your magnets and just have overall board control and board presence. And the best skill for that is Magnetic Attraction. It lets you go +1 right at the start of the duel by just summoning a magnet and searching for another one, which is absolutely fantastic. And getting access to that second magnet is genuinely huge, because that means even if your opponent is able to clear the board and out all of your magnets, you will have a follow-up magnet in your hand guaranteed, which is super, super essential. Along with that, this skill, being able to search Valkyrion, gets the brick out of your deck, which is super huge, and makes Valkyrion actually a much better card to run in the Magnet Warrior deck. But regardless, I think this still is 100% the best skill. Being able to go +2 and deck thinning like this is super essential, and just getting constant access to magnets is too important to not run this skill. This is the right one to go with. Going off into the monsters here of the deck, to start off, we will go ahead and show our one of boss monster, Valkyrion the Magna Warrior. So a lot of people are actually a bit iffy on Valkyrion here, because either you're going the magnetic field route and you feel like, well, I don't need Valkyrion the Magna Warrior, or you're going the Valkyrion route and you want to run multiples. I think running more than one is wrong, but I also think running 0 is wrong. Running 1 Gives you the ability to access Valkyrion, which is huge because being able to have access to a 3500 beat stick is amazing. Along with that, being able to threaten the Valkyrion summon when you have 3 normals in grave and a delta on field is super powerful and completely changes your opponent's playstyle versus you. And along with that, there's so many times where I've been able to win games by swinging in my delta, killing it, summoning Valkyrion, and then swinging over my opponent's monster for game. Honestly, Valkyrion is invaluable, and it is never worth cutting. It is not the best card in the deck, but it is 100% essential. The next monster we have here is 3 copies of the best magnet in the deck, that being 3 copies of Delta, the Magnet Warrior. So Delta is basically your dump 1 magnet into the grave, and dumping a magnet is way more powerful in this version of the deck than in the other version, because not only does it give you closer access to Valkyrion, but more relevantly, you have access to a special summon from grave for your magnetic field. And that is what you're really going for here. You want to be able to special summon back a magnet, swarm the field with at least 2 magnets on your opening turn, so opening Delta plus magnetic field is honestly your best possible opening hand. And you have 2 magnets, both of which can bounce, so even if they're able to out one without having to run into it, they have to be able to out a second one as well. And then your field spell gives you a follow-up even if they're able to kill both your magnets. Absolutely phenomenal card. You gotta play it so you have access to Valkyrion, and also so you can get access to 2 magnets in 1 turn. Super great card, a 3 of in every single magnet deck. The next 3 of in every single magnet deck is 3 of Beta, the Magnet Warrior. This is your second best magnet for the sole fact that it is a 1700 beat stick. It's just the biggest magnet, and you need your magnets to work with your field spell. Yes, any rock, earth monster works, but the magnets are just the best one to go with. Plus, they all work in conjunction with your magnetic attraction skill card and with the ability to summon Valkyrion. So you definitely need 3 betas. Now, for the deck that I actually played in the tournament, I did only run 6 copies of Magnet Warriors in general. Honestly, I regret doing it because every single brick that I came across was due to the fact that I didn't draw into a magnet. So I definitely want to bump up the overall magnet ratio going forward. But like I said, stay tuned to the end of the video to catch the updated deck profile. But going on to the next monster here, and the very last monster of the deck, we run 3 copies of Sphere Karibo. Sphere Karibo is super powerful. It is a hand trap. It is a monster effect, which, like I mentioned in my top 5 staples videos, we don't have really any way to stop a monster effect besides Angel 07 or discarding the Sphere Karibo. So, very fantastic card, especially when one of your bad matchups is Spellproof Armor. This card is absolutely amazing. Definitely a 3 of. Stopping conflict OTKs, stopping Spellproof Armor, and allowing your monsters to run over things that are normally bigger than them. Super huge. You gotta love Sphere Karibo. Going off into the spell cards of the deck, I'm pretty sure you guys can guess what's coming up first here. We have 3 copies of Magnetic Field. This is your field spell. This is the most important card in your deck alongside your Magnet Warriors, and is definitely a necessary 3 of in the deck. Magnetic Field not only allows you to swarm the field with your Magnet Warriors, but also gives you a bounce effect, which is, this card is the entire reason why magnets are good in the first place. It allows you to bounce your opponent's monsters if they're too big, which gives you a huge advantage over something like XYZs, where you can actually bounce the fusion monsters and get a plus off of it. Along with that, it gives you overall board control, and board control just allows you to beat down your opponent with your small monsters, even if they have bigger monsters overall. Magnetic Field is fantastic. You gotta run it at 3. If you're not running it at 3, you're playing the deck wrong. The next spell card I ran in the tournament was 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. After actually playing at the tournament, I think I'd rather play Dust Tornado. The only time Cosmic was better than Dust is if I hard drew it and was able to hit a back row, which did come up sometimes, but overall I think Dust Tornado is just better for the current format. There's just not enough value offered from a Cosmic Banish than a Dust pop, which you don't have to pay 1,000 life points for. And yes, life points are a resource, but you actually need that resource in this deck to be able to swing in your magnets and not worry about your life points. So if you're constantly spending 1,000 to pop back row, that can pose a bit of an issue. So I'd probably cut them for 2 copies of Dust Tornado, but they were great to have regardless. Loves the back row removal. And the final spell card I ran was 1 copy of Book of Moon. Very rare to see only 1 copy of Book of Moon. First reason for only 1, Spellproof Armor is one of our bad matchups. Similarly, Spell Canceller Conflict is also a very bad matchup. So Book of Moon is kind of bad against both those decks, so only 1 was really necessary. Along with that, we don't need to worry about flipping monsters too much because we're bouncing them so often. So yeah. Regardless though, Book of Moon is still a great card, and it's still a great card to run in the deck. That's going to conclude our spell cards here, and moving off into the trap cards, we have 3 copies of Metaverse. I said your field spell was the most important card in your deck, and thus we run not only 3 copies of it, but 6 copies, and I can assure you all that this is the ratio necessary for the Magnet Warrior deck. The field spell is way too important to not run 6 copies of it. You need to hit your field spell as often as you can, and you need to hit a Magnet Warrior almost just as often. Probably more often, but your skill definitely helps with you getting consistently them out. But max out on your field spells. You gotta see the field spell. Without the field spell, the deck isn't running. And Metaverse is actually fantastic for the field spell, because if your opponent does answer one that you have on the field and you were able to surprise Metaverse one out on like an attack declaration, you can get a nice little surprise bounce on your opponent. The surprise magnetic field is actually super important and super powerful, so a lot of times I like to leave a Metaverse set on my field and not always pop it to deck thin, just to have that surprise factor available to me. Along with that, if your opponent does for some reason not save their back row removal for a field spell and instead decides to hit your Metaverse, which they shouldn't do, but if they did, you can go ahead and chain your Metaverse and search out your field spell. So that is absolutely phenomenal to have access to as well. And then the final card for the main deck is 2 copies of Floodgate Trap Hole. And in my opinion, Floodgate Trap Hole is the better Book of Moon for this deck. Reason being, the deck's hard matchups are Spellproof Armor and Spell Canceller, and Floodgate Trap Hole answers both of those decks fantastically. So Book of Moon obviously can't do anything against those decks, but is more versatile as a whole. But because Floodgate Trap Hole helps answer your 2 most prevalent issues, it is the more necessary Book of Moon in the deck. Along with that, it also answers Breaker the Magical Warrior, and Breaker is super relevant and has the ability to pop your field spell as a +1, so you gotta be able to flip that Breaker with either a Floodgate or a Book, so it's nice to have access to both, but Floodgate is just better for those bad matchups, and yeah, definitely a 2 of in the deck. So that's going to go ahead and conclude the main deck here. Going off into the side deck, we have something real nice for you guys. We have 3 copies of Kaiser Glider and 1 copy of Inner Conflict. That is right, we side into a conflict build of the Magnet deck. And a lot of you guys might be a little bit surprised to hear that, but hear me out, alright? Magnetic Attraction is a fantastic skill to have, but it is not necessary. I mean, a lot of people have already started testing Twisted Personality with the deck and things like that. So I've already explained why Twisted Personality is not a good skill for the deck, and you shouldn't run it, but Inner Conflict, on the other hand, is truly fantastic. One of your big issues is the Spellproof Armor deck. Inner Conflict gives you a answer to Spellproof Jinzo or any monster your opponent has by just taking it and sacking it off for a Kaiser Glider. So Inner Conflict helps immensely by making you less reliant on your field spell, And then Kaiser Glider also fits well with your board control sort of strategy, as it does give you the ability to bounce your opponent's monsters if they, end up killing your Kaiser Glider. So what this basically does, it gives you easy OTK potential. It gives you the ability to out problematic monsters like that of Spellproof Armor monsters or Spell Canceller, and it continues to fall in line with your deck's overall board control strategy. So you basically run Inner Conflict to answer your bad matchups. This has been tested. It is very, very effective, and you basically always side into this version if you ever see your opponent playing Spell Canceller or you see them playing Spellproof Armor in Game 1. If you run into either of those in Game 1, you go ahead and side into the Conflict variant, side in your 3 Kaiser Gliders, and it helps immensely and gives you very, very good odds of winning. So this is definitely the correct side deck for Magnets, and this is going to help a lot of you guys who are iffy on the deck because of those matchups. Well, here you go. Here's your answer. And then the final 2 cards for the deck, for the side deck here, is 2 copies of Lost Wind. This is obviously here to help with the XYZ matchup. Yes, you have the ability to bounce your opponent's XYZ monsters and like the fusions, but if they can start getting off their effects and pop your field spell, things get really, really messy. So you want to be able to have access to Lost Wind to stop the pop and then just start bouncing them from there. So Lost Wind is still essential for the matchup, still a fantastic card, and is still necessary in the side deck. So the last thing to show you guys is the standard extra deck that we always run in these deck profiles, because you always like to have access to your extra deck or have an extra deck to show, especially with XYZ being relevant. You never know, your opponent might think you're on it. So yeah, and then obviously we have the updated deck profile, which will show up on the screen here now for you guys. As you can see, there is 2 main changes, that being the Book of Moon replaced with a Gamma, the Magnet Warrior, and the 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone replaced with Dust Tornado. So, reasoning behind these switches, obviously we needed more Magnet Warriors, so we added in another one in Gamma the Magnet Warrior, which gives us always an 80+% chance of opening with our Magnet Warrior plus Field Spell combo. Along with that, we also cut the Cosmics for Dust, which I mentioned I wanted to do while going through the deck profile. Now you might be curious as to why I cut Book of Moon. Overall, with our bad matchups being our Spell Canceller or Spellproof Armor, we want to be running as little spells as possible, especially since our deck's main focus is around a field spell. So I basically cut every other spell card besides the magnetic field to limit our amount of spell cards, so we're only reliant on the field spell, and our entire deck isn't based around spell cards, which helps us not be as hindered by our bad matchup, which is absolutely huge. And before I start rounding down this video, I want to give one huge shout out to Art LeQuint here, because the entire idea of playing this deck and focusing it around the magnetic field spell card was completely from him and watching him play in my FFA event, when I actually watched him play throughout all of his Swiss rounds and play in top cut and do so well. I realized that, hey, he's not focusing his deck around Valkyrion, he's focusing it around the field spell, and because of him, I basically realized how Magnet Warriors are meant to be played. So without Art LeQuint, this deck would not be possible. I'd also like to give a huge congratulations to Art for winning the Speed Duel League Win-A-Box with a Magnet Warrior deck. Main deck is very similarly to mine, but the side deck is extremely different. I still think that the Conflict side deck is the way to go for Magnets. He might think otherwise, but I do think this is the way to go. Regardless, huge shout out to him, as this deck would never be here without him doing so well with it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button down below and also consider subscribing. I do videos at least a few times a week. Things are definitely starting to slow down a bit as work is starting to pick up for me once again, but I'm trying to give you guys videos as often as I can, so hope you guys are enjoying the content that I am handing out, and like I said, I'll be getting videos out as often as possible. But anyway, I'll catch you guys very, very soon for another video, and potentially a tier list for the Battle City box format. Anyway, that's a wrap, guys. Peace.